Most men never realize the exact moment they lose power. There is no announcement, no argument, no dramatic collapse. It happens quietly, almost politely, under the disguise of love, compromise, and emotional maturity, one small concession at a time, one unspoken boundary swallowed, one decision postponed for the relationship. And by the time the man feels something is wrong, the hierarchy has already shifted. He is no longer choosing, he is managing. He is no longer leading his life, he is reacting to it. Machiavelli would have recognized this pattern instantly, not as romance, not as devotion, but as a failure of rule. Because power is not something you turn on and off depending on context. It is not suspended inside intimacy. Power governs every human interaction, especially the ones that claim to be built on love. The man who believes relationships exist outside of power dynamics becomes the most vulnerable man of all. What follows are not moral judgments, these are structural errors, psychological miscalculations that slowly strip a man of leverage, authority, and attraction. Not because women are malicious, but because human nature responds predictably to strength, direction, and self-possession. Machiavelli didn't write to make men cruel, he wrote to make them effective, and effectiveness requires clarity. The first way a man loses power is by abandoning his direction in order to preserve emotional closeness. This is where the collapse begins, even if it looks like commitment on the surface. A man meets a woman he desires, and gradually his life starts to bend around her comfort. His routines soften, his goals get delayed, his edge dulls. He tells himself this is what partnership requires, but what he is actually communicating is far more dangerous, that his path is negotiable. Direction is not a hobby, it is the spine of a man's identity. It is the thing that orients his decisions when no one is watching. When a man pauses his forward motion to stabilize a relationship, he doesn't become more loving, he becomes less grounded. And nothing undermines attraction faster than a man who is no longer moving towards something independent of the relationship. Machiavelli warned repeatedly that a ruler who appears dependent invites disorder. The same applies here. A woman may initially enjoy being prioritized, but over time she senses the imbalance. She feels that she has become the center rather than a companion, and that shift creates pressure, not intimacy. Attraction requires motion, momentum, a sense that the man is anchored to a mission larger than the relationship itself. When that disappears, respect erodes quietly, even if affection remains. A man with purpose is stable. A man without it becomes emotionally porous, and once a woman senses that his happiness rises and falls with her approval, the dynamic changes. She is no longer relating to a sovereign equal. She is managing emotional weight. That is not romantic. It is exhausting. The second way men lose power is by turning themselves into problem solvers rather than equals. This mistake is almost universal, especially among men who pride themselves on competence. When a woman struggles, the instinct is to step in, fix, organize, resolve, absorb. The man believes he is being supportive. What he is actually doing is redefining his role. Support respects autonomy. Rescue removes it. When a man consistently takes responsibility for problems that are not his, he positions himself as infrastructure rather than presence. He becomes useful instead of respected, and usefulness is not the same as desire. Machiavelli warned against mercenaries for a reason. They serve, but they do not rule. They are relied upon when convenient and discarded when the structure changes. A man who fixes everything becomes predictable, and predictability kills polarity. Over time, the woman stops seeing him as a grounded force and starts seeing him as a resource. Gratitude may remain, but attraction does not survive there. No one desires the person who exists to manage their chaos. Power is not displayed by removing all friction from another person's life. Power is displayed by standing firm in one's own center and allowing others to meet you there. When a man believes in a woman's capability instead of rescuing her from discomfort, he communicates respect.
When he removes every obstacle for her, he communicates superiority disguised as care. That dynamic never ends well. The third way men lose power is by seeking emotional permission to be themselves. This is the most invisible form of submission because it masquerades as harmony. The man starts monitoring his tone. He edits his opinions. He avoids disagreement. He shapes his behavior around her emotional responses, not because he is weak, but because he fears disruption. This is psychological dependence. The moment a man needs a woman's approval to feel settled, he has inverted the hierarchy. He has placed her in the role of evaluator. Machiavelli was explicit. Authority cannot exist where validation is required. The man who needs to be understood loses the right to define reality. Women sense this instantly, even if they cannot articulate it. They feel when a man's identity is flexible, when his convictions soften under pressure, when his emotional stability depends on her mood. And once that perception forms, attraction begins to decay. A man who stands firm, even at the risk of misunderstanding, communicates certainty. Certainty is grounding. It creates trust. The man who adjusts himself to maintain approval communicates fear of loss, and fear of loss is the opposite of power. When you examine these 5 behaviors together, a single pattern emerges. In every case, the man places the relationship above himself, above his direction, above his standards, above his autonomy. Machiavelli would call this the collapse of sovereignty. Power does not require cruelty. It requires coherence. A man who remains whole does not need to dominate. His independence does the work for him. He does not threaten departure. His ability to walk away is understood. And paradoxically, this is the man women trust most, not because he is cold, but because he is stable, not because he withholds love, but because he does not abandon himself to offer it. If you do these 5 things, you do not lose power because women take it from you. You lose it because you surrender it willingly in exchange for approval, comfort, and false security. Machiavelli never warned men against love. He warned them against self-betrayal. And power, once surrendered, is never returned politely. If this message hit where it needed to, don't ignore that reaction. Like the video, share it with someone who needs clarity, not comfort. Leave a comment with your thoughts and subscribe for more psychology rooted in reality, not illusion. The men who keep their power are not louder, they are grounded.